Ant-Man, directed by Peyton Reed, starring Paul Rudd, Michael Douglas, Evangeline Lilly, Corey Stoll, Bobby Cannavale, Anthony Mackie, and Michael Pena. On paper, making this movie may have seemed like absolute lunacy because of the sheer silliness of the concept of Ant-Man as a character. However, you have to remember that just a year prior, Marvel has made Guardians of the Galaxy, a film in which two of the main characters were a talking raccoon and a tree, and they made it work. So, really, there should have been no doubt that they can adapt Ant-Man in a way that would only not only make sense within the established universe, but also be quite entertaining at the same time. The story opens with a flashback to 1989, where Hank Pym, played by Michael Douglas, discovers that S.H.I.E.L.D. and specifically Howard Stark have been trying to use the mysterious Pym particles that he discovered for their own purposes. Convinced that this is too powerful a thing in the hands of anyone but himself, Hank severs his ties with S.H.I.E.L.D. and essentially goes into exile, creating his own company. Then we switch to modern day and meet Scott Lang, played by Paul Rudd, a cut burglar with a past of taking money from the big bad corporations and giving it back to the poor regular people. He gets out of prison after 3 years and is ready to get his life back on track to provide for his daughter Cassie, now being raised by her mom and her new boyfriend Paxton. But life is difficult for ex-cons, and so in search of more money, Scott decides to take on another illegal job. He breaks into a house, which turns out to be Pym's, and steals away a suit that allows him to shrink to the size of an ant. And as it then turns out, Hank lets Scott rob him as a sort of test drive, as a job interview, as it were, as he needs an ally to use the suit and help him stop his former protege, and who's currently running the company, he's called Darren Cross, from using a similar suit as a weapon and selling it off to various bad guys around the world. Sounds a bit all over the place when condensed into a couple of sentences like this, but actually it is remarkably tight and streamlined in the movie itself. In essence, we follow three main storylines that are closely tied together. Scott's journey to be a good father for Cassie, Hank's mission to save the world, as it were, and repair his relationship with his own daughter Hope, and finally Cross as he gets progressively further down the psychopathic maniac spiral. I thought it was remarkable how well those three storylines are weaved together and how plot points from one naturally lead to further developments in one of the others. The movie is also very, very efficient in terms of quickly and elegantly establishing simple things to use them as payoff much later. An example, in the opening sequence in prison, there's this goodbye ritual where Scott and another huge guy throw punches at each other. And we see that despite Scott throwing a pretty solid punch, the other guy is basically unfazed. Then Scott's former cellmate and friend outside, Louise, mentions how he was the only person ever to knock that other guy out. It seems like a throwaway line then, but then in the final act, Louise finds himself in a dangerous situation helping Scott, and he ends up punching three guys in a row, three different people, knocking each of them out with a single hit. This is exactly the type of thing that I absolutely love in all forms of storytelling. Tight and efficient and also quite funny at the same time. Much like the rest of the film, I think Ant-Man is one of the more comedic of the Marvel movies, even to this day. And part of that is utilizing Paul Rudd's natural comedic talents. Part of that is excellent supporting cast with great chemistry between one another. There's the three ex-con friends of Scott, the banter between Scott and Hank, the total exasperation that Hope has for him initially, and of course the various action-related stuff that has to do with the size-changing shenanigans. Most importantly, the climax of the film, which essentially is two tiny dudes fighting each other in a child's playroom, using toys as weapons and giant objects to throw at one another. I think that's done quite brilliantly as well. But perhaps most importantly, out of all those things, underneath the action and the humor, the movie really taps into the thing that makes the MCU so strong, which is the characters and the relationships. Ant-Man as a movie has a whole lot of heart between all the good guy characters and especially the relationship between Scott and his daughter Cassie. It's just very sweet and genuine to see the two of them interact. Cassie herself is very cute and we instantly believe that this is a compelling motivator for Scott for basically all of his actions. I think the only reasonable complaint that one can level at the film is that, like many others, the final act boils down to hero fights an evil version of himself, which gets stale after a while, but I'd argue in this case it's a little more it's a little easier to forgive it, not because of the fight itself, but because of the emotional weight behind it, the reasoning that Scott has to pick up the fight in the first place. Other than that, though, Ant-Man remains a really enjoyable film that successfully marries the superhero genre with elements of heist film and a family comedy. Good stuff all around.